make an incision down here, and then we help it go up. But the tree, you can see, it decides how much it's giving us. It starts to taper off up there, and then gets to the top, and then it just drops down for us. And that's how the cedar tree decides what it's going to give us. Hello, my name is Elliott. My foremost nat is Samithia. I'm from Snuneymuxw. I've been weaving for 24 years. Most of what you're going to see right here is red cedar. I'm going to show you some of my weaving. The original person who taught me to make a wristband and a headband and a little basket was from the Nechaniel area, and her name was Julie Joseph. She showed me the little basket and the headband and told me, okay, you're on your own, you're good to go. So I was hooked. I wanted to know all I could about cedar weaving. So I went and I researched and I did everything I could to get my hands on what we used to do before, because I knew we had done it. So 24 years later, I teach cedar bark hat weaving. I do classes. These are all red cedar. There's a bit of yellow cedar in this fedora hat. This is a twined twilled hat. This is a plaited hat where you go over, under, over, under. You can see at the top it's over one, under one. That's called plaiting. That's the kind of weaving that is. This is over one, under one, over one, under one. So these are different cedar hats that can be made. I also make cedar twill purses. You can see twill is any variety of over two, under two, and you can do it to make a pattern. So there's a pattern in the front here, and then there's a different twilled pattern in the back that you can see. And that's all red cedar with dyed red cedar. In this purse here, you can see the pattern, and in the back it has a different twill design. Okay, so I want to talk a bit about the cedar rope. Cedar in our language is called chbe. And a long time ago, not only women were weavers. This cedar rope, a long time ago, men used to make, in the museum around here, you can find a rope that's about this thick, and it's 90 feet long, and it's attached to a whaler's harpoon. And the only way they could make that is if men worked together to create that rope. Because just to make this rope, which is only about a ½ inch in diameter, this is hard on your fingers. So if they're making a rope about this big, they really needed to have brute strength to make that happen. And I just want to say that because sometimes there's a stigma attached to men who pick up and do weaving. And I just want to say that they used to do this kind of rope weaving, and they did it to make harpoons for whaling, or they attached it to their fishing spears, and that there's other materials that they used for that as well. Okay, so I have a treat for us. This is about basket weaving. None of what I'm showing you is new. I didn't weave it. When it's a newer cedar root, I have cedar root here. When you look at cedar root, it's white. So this is fresh cedar root. It comes off with this black stuff. You have to take the dark stuff off, and then you get this beautiful white. And so when you freshly take cedar root, it's white, just so you know. But over time, it turns these beautiful brown colors. So this is an old basket. It belonged to my husband's great grandmother, and she traded for weaving for this basket. And this one here, my husband Joe was in when he was a baby. So this is Cedar Root weaving. And so we knew a cedar tree so well that we knew we could even not just harvest the bark, but we could harvest the root. This weaving is coil weaving. Coil weaving is more like sewing. And so this basket may not be as old as this basket. This must be a little bit younger than this one. And this one is decaying, and it's way brown, so it's way older. The color that you see is cherry bark. The red is cherry bark, the black is cherry bark. We did dye cherry bark to get the different color, because if you look at this weaving, how uniform that is, it wouldn't be possible to get this much cedar root, to get this uniform weaving. So they had access to a lot of root a long time ago. And this here, this is the bark, the outer bark of a cedar tree, and this is the inner bark of the cedar tree, and this is aged a little bit. And we would call this a cedar baler, and it was to bale canoes out a long time ago. So we would just scoop the water out, and so this is something that was functional for us before. And we gathered this the same time we would gather cedar materials, spate materials. So I'm going to share with you some of the materials that I use when I'm weaving. I like to make what's called forests in a basket because of the different materials that I use when I'm weaving. This is the stalk of a stinny nettle. And so I use this stinny nettle to weave with. And so this is it, like the leaves are off, but basically it's it in the raw material. Currently it's being dried out so I can use it. Stinny nettle in the raw, and this is stinny nettle that I've processed. This is spate, which is red cedar. So it comes as off of the tree with the outer bark attached. So we remove that outer bark, and we only take the inner part of the bark, and that's what we weave with. And then so to get it to this point, because it's quite fine, we've split it down maybe 2 or 3 times to get it this fine, and then we've cut it to length. So I'm ready to do a basket when I'm at this point. So this is red cedar, which is spate. This here is raw cherry bark. And so you can either use the outer bark, and so if I choose to use this outer cherry bark, I would sand it down. And I could sand this side down too, and I'd get a more red color. So I still need to do that, and you'll see that in the basket when I'm making them. This here is willow. It's green willow, and so it's stiff right now, but if I stick it in the water for a little bit, it will become pliable, and I'll be able to weave with it. But once it dries, I wouldn't be able to wet it again. And this is the outer bark and the inner bark of the willow, and sometimes I choose to show the outside of the willow, and sometimes I choose to show the inside. It just depends. This here is Cedar Root. And so this part, this thicker pieces here, still needs to be broken down a little bit so I can weave with it, because it's this kind of fine material. So this is kind of the mid of it. But the choice is this fine, and you can see it's got a nice white gleam to it. So that's kind of what I'm after when I'm using Cedar Root. Cedar Root is really quite strong and very nice to work with. I really enjoy Cedar Root. I can twine with it, or I can just twill. This here, I'm ready to do a basket. So these two pieces here is yellow cedar. So I'll use yellow cedar in my basket. And this here is it's blackberry vine, which grows along. Some people have blackberry vine, and it grows right along the ground. And this is going to be in the basket. This is three-corner grass, which you find in a swamp. I want to come back to the cedar. When we go out to gather cedar, our family goes as a whole unit. Our sons know how to gather and pull cedar. When we gather cedar, there has to be a particular size tree we're looking for, and has to be so wide around, can't have turned into a grandfather tree, and we'll talk more about that later. And our value for this, we have a really high value for the cedar tree. We believe that everything around us as Hwomok or First Nations people is alive, and we're connected to it. So I do not take cedar for granted, and we believe it's alive. And so when we go to gather cedar, we put our hands on the tree, and we ask the tree permission first to take it. We may even say who we are and what we use it for. We're a weaver. And if the tree, it feels good, we say a prayer for the tree, and then we take the tree. So when we're teaching all of our family members and we go out, we all go out with that value. So we have a high value for the cedar tree. And when we pull it, we only take what we need. We never overtake, we never overharvest. If you took cedar bark's whole bark off the whole tree, you would kill it. And we have that understanding, so we would never do that. So we were taught to value the cedar tree. And so we only take about 20% of a cedar tree. And only as far as the cedar gives it. When the cedar's done giving it, it drops down. So that's how much cedar we take. We have high value for it. We still need to separate the outer bark from the inner bark. And some people break the bark and they break it off. But what we have found when we do that is there's still lots of cedar that we're just like throwing away. So we don't do that. We take a knife and we separate the outer bark from the inner bark. Some of the cedar still has its little bit of red on it, but that's as much as we would leave. And then when we weave, we take that off. So there's a lot of work when you're harvesting cedar. And then it comes in a thick way, so there's usually 2 or 3 layers to that. And then we still have to separate those layers to get to this fine cedar that I have in my hand here. Cedar trees in our history was used for, you saw some of the cedar hats. So it was used for cedar hats, it was used for cedar capes. Our people were so connected to the land that the trees were really huge way back then. that they could take a slab of a tree off of a cedar tree and know not to kill that tree. So a long time ago they had that way of knowing. So we used canoes for cedar, we used our paddles for cedar. So we have large lawn houses a long time ago. So the houses would be built of big plank, or not just planks, but the whole tree could be one corner stand. So they could have 4, 6, or 8 stands, and the houses could be 30 feet long, and 60 to 100 people could live in those houses. I'm here to show you an old cedar tree which is on my husband's family property. This would be considered an old grandfather tree. At least 10 adult people have to hold hands to go around the tree. We highly value cedar. We would never take anything that would harm the tree. That cedar tree is sacred to us. And when I was in Santa Fe, we are the Seeds last year. I had a number of cedar items like my hats and my purses and baskets. And one lady asked me, "Are you trying to kill all the cedar trees?" And I was taken a bit back by that. So I went to a local person and I said, "Is there a cedar tree that you have here in Santa Fe nearby? Do you see it?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Could you show me?" And he showed me a tree that wasn't very tall at all. And so I asked him, "Is that the size tree cedars usually get?" He said they can get a little bit bigger, but not much bigger. And so then I understood the person's question. It's not our teaching ever to over harvest anything. It's our teaching that we're connected to cedar. We're one with cedar. So we would never harm the cedar. So we only ever take 20% of a tree. We wouldn't take because this is rounded. Once it starts to get rounded, just like this here, you don't take it anymore. It's considered a grandfather or a grandmother tree. So we wouldn't harvest from this giant tree here. This is more like a cedar tree we would harvest from. I still feel stunted by the tree. It still goes up 30 or 40 feet. I teach people, put your hand on the tree and feel that. There's an energy that transpires. And you're asking the tree. You say who you are. You introduce yourself like you're talking to an elder. You say who you are, say where you're from, and you ask. You ask in a good way, "Please, I'm a cedar bark weaver, and I'm asking for some of your cedar bark for weaving." And if it feels good, then it's okay to take it. Then I say a prayer in my own heart for this tree, and I thank the tree, and I thank the Creator for this beautiful tree. And then I'm only going to ever take what I need, only 20% of this tree. And this tree lets me know how much it's going to give me. I don't decide that. What's ideal about this tree is there's no branches that go up for a long way. And that we are not over harvesting, and we never would. It's not who we are as a people. Haichka CM, all my relations. Haichka. Okay, so we are weaving. We're starting the base of the basket. I'm just flattening out some 3-corner grass. Here's the base that we started with. Here is the frame. It's a styrofoam frame. So I start at the top. I make sure that I have it right where I want it. I'm using some sinew. Remember, you always start in the middle, never at the side, so we're going to start in the middle. I'm going to tie this piece of sinew. I'm tying it onto the grass, and then I slide the sinew under, and those pieces go under, and I go over. If you see, I go across and under, I go across. This is called twining. I've been plaiting and now I'm twining. I'm twining the 3-corner grass. I just put that in there to keep the basket in place so it won't wobble around. So I'm going to go around the 3-corner grass. I like to do it right at the base. It's a really nice material. It's spongy, soft, but it's versatile, meaning I can pull on it a bit and it won't break. And there aren't lots of grasses that can do that. So I really like to use 3-corner grass, especially at the base of a basket. I was taught by an elder that this is going to be a seaton. I'm talking to the slowie, because once it's off the tree, it's a slowie. It's bait, but we would call it slowie at this time. And we're teaching it like who I am. I'm a weaver, and I'm asking for your help. I'm asking the bait for help, and I'm letting it know it's going to be a seaton. In our language, seaton means basket. It's going to be a seaton, and I'm asking the material of the cedar to help me, the energy of it. And so when I'm teaching workshops, I teach people that connection. That's important. It's important that we remember where cedar comes from, that we don't take it for granted, and that we remember we're connected. My whole family goes out. Cedar is not meant, you wouldn't be able to do it by yourself. You do need your whole family, and my husband is a really great cedar harvester. He wouldn't want me to call him it, but he's a master cedar harvester, and he's taught our sons. And actually our youngest son is a weaver, and he's 25, and he's going his own way with weaving, and we're really quite proud of that. And he's maintaining the teachings of connectedness and not over harvesting, and being connected to cedar. So we're quite proud of that. Okay, we're back. So the last time we were here, we were putting on the 3-corner grass at the bottom here, and I have since added these two quite white is yellow cedar, and then I used sinew, and then I used a red cedar. This green here is the same as this, it's 3-corner grass. And then I used the outside of willow, and then this white is the inside of willow, and I twined with 3-corner grass with sinew. So it's over one, under one. For the pieces that go across, they're all over one, under one. And when I'm working with the 3-corner grass and the sinew, I'm twining. And so I want to feature the yellow cedar. I want to feature the red. I featured the whole tree of willow. And I'm going to do cherry bark, and I'm going to finish with stinny now. Okay, so we finished the basket. So I did add the cherry bark at the top here. And I did, so the cherry bark is plated over one, under one, over one, under one, all the way around. And there's 2 green lines there, and that is stinny nettle. And then I finished. So I just want to go over with you. This is willow, outside of willow. So that's in the basket. And this is the inside of the willow, and that's the white here. Here is a strip of cherry bark, and I chose to show the inside of the cherry bark rather than the outside. And this grass here is stinny nettle. It's in the basket. There's yellow cedar and red cedar. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 different elements of in this basket. Oh, 7, because I forgot to mention 3-corner grass. So there's 7. 7 different materials in a forest in a basket. The only thing this basket needs is a handle, and it's completed. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. Hi, Ichka.